try to lay off the cigarettes. Yes.
But yeah, like you were saying, Quinn, how long?
Excuse you?
Ours was an hour and 57 minutes, almost 2 hours long, the one you and I did.
I'm at
So
work.
right-
I'm like, hey, you done yet? You're gonna come pick me up? Not answering. Not answering.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Well, then you know why, right? You know why. Jump, take a cab, bitch. No, I'm just
That
kidding.
was a
I'm
good
just
call.
talking tough in front of my friends, right? Yeah.
Listen, I walk, but he doesn't like me walking to and from work.
Ever so the gentleman, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm
It's gonna be
sorry,
harder
I
to
caught
steal you
you.
away from him than I thought, I guess. Hey?
Oh, jeez. Never mind. Welcome. I see some people hopping on. If you guys are tuning in with us, please drop a comment. We're streaming to like 8 different platforms, and we're not sure exactly who is from where. So if you don't mind, please leave a comment. Let us know where you're watching from, and
Subtitle.
we will be getting done started here in a few minutes.
Awesome.
But we got, of course, Chuck LaFlange over there in Thailand. And then we have returning Ryan Bathgate from last week. And then we have the one and only Quinn Stone joining us today.
Thank you
Thanks for
having
coming
me.
on, Quinn. Yeah.
We
Yeah,
are
right.
Jared and Brianna.
Oh, I'm not the lovely Brianna today.
The lovely Brianna.
Holy fuck, you just can't do nothing right today.
Chuck, you just wedged your way in there a little more.
right. Yeah, absolutely.
Jared, you set that standard too high.
I was
man.
waiting till we were live and had like a good audience to tell you how lovely you look today.
Oh,
right?
thank you.
Yeah.
Well, it's coming in. I see little by little.
Uh,
If you guys are just tuning in again, it might sound like a broken record. I'll say it a couple times for the people that do hop on. Streaming to like 8 different platforms. Please drop a comment. Let us know where you're watching from, and please share out the live.
Yeah,
Definitely
everybody
appreciate
share,
it.
everybody
Yep,
share.
share it
That's
out.
helpful.
Yeah. It's crazy to think that it's Friday night back home where you guys are at, right? Because for me, it's like 9 o'clock Saturday morning.
Did you celebrate Thanksgiving over there in Thailand?
No, there's no Christian holidays, right? It's
No,
some of the
but you
like
personally. You
no
personally,
me
did you
no no I
Canada
didn't
does
actually.
October.
No, yeah. Oh, and that's
that's
the other
right.
thing
You'll
too.
have it
Yeah,
different.
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
regular,
Yeah.
Christmas is the same for us heathens up in Canada, but
yeah, it was a regular work week with football all day on my computer at work.
Yeah.
Brian, it was
Yeah.
it was crazy because I did I was a guest when I went on Hard Knocks Talks, and at the end Donna was like, "Have a happy Thanksgiving," and I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, "Oh, it's Thanksgiving tomorrow," and I'm like, "Oh, I didn't even know that."
Yeah, it's not
Right,
close
right.
to November.
Yeah.
It was crazy. I was like, "Wow, I didn't know that."
Oh, hey, we never talked about the outro with Quinn.
What happened?
Well, whatever. We're not live. We're not
Oh,
like live.
it's-
We are live, but
It's
So,
all right.
Quinn,
Tell him.
at the end of the episode,
Yes.
there's a little outro thing I do. When you hear me say, use the words, you say you are loved. The rest will make sense when we get there. It's at the very end of the episode.
Is
Use
that
the
in
words,
concert?
you are loved. Everybody
You are
together.
loved.
Yeah.
In unison, everybody, you are loved.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
You are
then you
loved.
don't
So-
say anything else.
And then don't say anything because Chuck will get very angry.
Chuck
You,
gets the last word.
metaphorically.
Ryan has fucked with the outro a few times in our weekly episodes. And yeah, it's
I like
oh,
danger.
dude, like, are you crazy, man? Like, fuck.
I did it the first episode that we did, and I'm like, "Yep, never again."
Yeah. But I saw how much it bugs them, so I've done it a few times.
Yeah, he's earned that right. He's earned
Yeah.
that right. You know, yeah.
What's going on, everybody? What's going on? We're just waiting a few more minutes to get some more people on before we jump in. We got a good show tonight. I'm actually really, really excited because we're piggybacking off of what we ended last week for the ones that we're watching. And Quinn is very, very, very outspoken in this field, and so I'm very excited to have him share his insights and his thoughts on everything. And
Absolutely.
again, if you're just hopping on, please let us know where you're watching from. Share the live out, and let us know. We love the support. We appreciate you guys taking time out of your Friday night or Saturday morning, wherever you're at. Thailand. You have anybody from Thailand, Chuck, that you've told that can watch?
Yeah, whether or not they do, I mean, who knows, right? It's funny, the staff here, not any of them so far. Before I got here, I know a bunch of them were paying attention to the show, but since I've been here, not so much. It's a weird dynamic. I'm not sure what that's all about, right? But like the owner is very much. I mean, he's a repeat guest. He's one of my very close friends. Ryan knows him as well, right? Mike knows him. So just the most amazing character guy. He's amazing, right? So
all right,
but
about 10 seconds, and then we'll run this intro.
Yeah. Can you see the light? How it's kind of blinky behind me?
Yeah.
Like it's do you know why that is? Like
Shadow
it's
ID.
usually a little bit of no. It's not shadows. The lights here run on
Shadow
direct
people?
currents
Is
instead
it
of
shadow
alternating
people?
currents.
DC. Huh?
That's Metty. That's Metty. Okay. Right. The lights run on DC instead of AC here, so it's at a different frequency.
Mhm.
So you actually
Yeah.
have to like figure out how to change your settings so that it blinks at the same.
Is Chuck really gonna get frozen?
What was that, Chuck? We can't hear you.
Is he really
He's
gonna
froze.
get frozen right
He's
before
not
we start?
Frozen.
He's not frozen. He's doing that as a trick.
Yeah,
He's doing his strike a pose. Oh,
he's got to get the right frequency.
hold on.
Yeah.
This will be the first technical thing we've ever had doing this.
Hey, well, yo,
Time is the lights,
listen,
'cause the
I tell every single one of my friends, you get me around any electronic device, and for some reason,
There we
it
are.
goes
Am I
haywire.
back?
Nope.
I'm back.
You are.
Oh, there you
Okay.
go.
Okay. Good. I'm now closing everything on my computer except.
I
this
was
window.
like, leave it to Chuck to be glitching out on us. All right. While you're doing that, Chuck, while you're closing all that out, I'm gonna go ahead and roll the intro real quick, and then we're gonna hop in.
What happens when two compelling podcasts live? You get BlakAsh Radio, the live mix of Sebastian's Awesome Podcast and the Blacklist Podcast. Here we don't just share stories, we delve into them, exploring the depths of addiction and recovery through powerful topic-driven discussions. Each week, join us for a thought-provoking exchange with our dynamic panel as we tackle the tough questions and uncover new perspectives on the issues that matter the most. This week, Bathgate is back to participate in a four-person panel featuring social media sensation Quinn Stone. Tune in Friday night, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. See you there.
Chuck. Oh,
Yeah.
Chuck, hold on. Let me add him. Let me add him back in.
Lord.
There we are. Yay.
Get that
Okay.
DC going.
Yeah.
It's a DC. It's the DC.
Throw some more coal in the old fire or whatever you got to do.
Right.
what is going on, everybody? Man, this is episode 3 of BlakAsh Radio. I think it's pretty
BlakAsh
cool, man.
Radio.
So I miss Tina's back in, by the way. Tina's back in the chat from
Hey, Tina.
last week and the week prior.
Oh, hi, Tina.
You know,
Thank
we'll
you.
always be
She
here.
will always be here. But no, we're gonna have a good conversation. So you got Mr. Chuck LaFlange from Ashes to Awesome, Ryan Bathgate from Kaleidoscope, Quinn Stone from Cali Sober, and he's a big sensation right now. and then you got the Black
I am?
yeah, you are the Blacklist Podcast. Thank you,
Humility
Quinn,
becomes
for
you.
hopping on.
Humility
Thank you.
becomes.
I'm honored, man. I'm just some random dude, bro. I ain't nothing special, man. I appreciate it.
It's still you're the insights after I had you on our podcast. It was we kind of hit it off. So I thoroughly enjoy your outlook on everything, and
Thank you.
I guess I should take this opportunity to publicly invite you onto my podcast because now I kind of have to say yes, and so
I'd be honored. I'd be honored.
absolutely. We'll hook up afterwards with the details.
Definitely. Thank you.
yeah. Chuck, why don't you lead us in?
All right. So last week, we kind of finished things off talking about, I'm going to say alternate recovery methods with quotes, although I hate the fact that you almost have to use quotes when you say alternate recovery. You shouldn't even have to use the word alternate, right? At the end of the day, but that's the reality of today's landscape. It's, with our traditional recovery modality that is 12 steps.
Mhm.
I mean, there's comments I could go on about that for a long time too. So we finished off talking about that. Quinn is kind of the perfect person to talk about that with your platform being, Cali Sober. I mean, that is the quintessential. Ooh, the quintessential.
Yeah,
recovery,
that was
recovery,
my
right?
tag name at one point.
Jing.
Really?
Right.
That's what's up.
Oh, that was good. I thought I was being like really witty for a second there, and you're like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
my
that was
name's been
tag name
Quinn
once
my
again."
whole life. You don't think I thought of that one?
Ooh.
Groundbreaking. Groundbreaking.
Just let me have it once in a while, right? Just once in a while, let me have
Not
it.
never. No. No.
Not this time.
But yeah,
Next
yeah.
time. I'll
Definitely
think
not.
about it.
No, probably not next time. But yeah,
Just because you're from
Um,
Canada, don't mean you get a pass.
that's right.
Ryan over there chewing his
Hey.
gum.
Yeah. Oh,
Hey,
Yeah, he knows not to open it near the microphone anymore.
yeah. I got my
That
little
was-
piece. I got my little pieces lined up here.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. addicted to nicotine. Clearly.
Yeah.
We all
Um,
got something. We all got something.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying hard to give up the smokes. I've switched over to the vape now for a while, so we'll see. Right. But
Yeah.
I gave up the smokes like 10 years ago and went back to university because I couldn't afford them
yeah.
and started vaping. And I just don't. I stopped buying them. I've never really
Yeah.
quit. Yeah.
One of those.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
Yeah.
I'd be like, hey, give me smoke. I'd
So-
never give you one back. I swear.
So
I'll
you
never
guys
give you one back.
down in the US or over in the US as it is for me now. What the thing is, cigarettes in Canada are unbelievably expensive. Right? Like it's, for a carton, we're about $140 now, something like that.
It's $20 a pack right now.
Which is about fair
How
enough.
much
That's
did
like
you say, Ryan?
$2 Canadian, right?
$20
$20
for
a
a pack.
pack?
Yeah.
For like 25 cigarettes. Yeah.
I thought
No,
it was like,
no,
oh, Star
20
Pack
20 year
2020.
BC.
25, I think.
Yeah.
Y'all do
Well, we have
things
8 packs of
different up
25 in a carton. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Or 20
That's
packs.
That's why we
Now.
go to the res and we get a carton for $27.
No, you don't, because you
We
have
got a
to pay
lot of
taxes
Indian
on that.
reservations around
Yeah, we
there.
have a lot of Indian reservations out here. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's the big legal cigarettes has become a huge illicit market item out here.
Yeah. I did buy a legit pack of smokes for the last 6 months I was in Calgary, right? So yeah.
Quinn, why don't you tell us just a real quick a little bit about you?
Sure. So my story kind of started, from, well, already I'm from France. Okay. I moved to the States when I was 4 years old. Didn't speak a word of English. Neither did my mom, and neither did my brother. My dad stayed back there in France, and so from early on, I was heavily bullied for my accent, for being French, for not having a dad, for just the list goes on. My mom got into domestic violent relationships with a cokehead alcoholic. Very violent towards her, verbally and physically. Kind of started to learn bad habits from, just observing what was going on around me. I was also molested as a child. Went through a lot of dark moments. My first suicidal thought was like, I think I was 7. And we were moving around a lot. Moved 6 different schools by the time I got to high school. And so making friends was hard. Being accepted was hard. That's why I don't have an accent right now. I still speak fluent French, but because of everything that I was going through, I was like, man, I can't let anybody know that I'm French. Like, I have to pretend to be American or else I'm going to get all this backlash. So from a young age, I was taught, like, hey, you have to put on a mask. You have to be somebody other than who you are. You are basically alone because every time you've tried to reach out, your cries for help weren't heard. So from the age of 7, I was like, I'm basically on my own. Trying to figure out life at 7 years old, trying to grow up at 7 years old. I just was like, hey, I need to observe. I need to observe my stepdad, make sure that he's not red in the face when he gets home from work because that means he's drunk. So get out of his way. And I started to learn how to be hyper vigilant, hyper focus, pay attention to facial expressions, micro expressions, things like that. And then I went, I moved to the upper side of Salt Lake City, which is like kind of like the nicer side of Salt Lake City, and got into high school, and I started making friends. These friends were all skaters. They were all starting to get into drugs and stuff. We were about 16. Start hearing about, this guy doing, this guy smokes weed and that guy does mushrooms and this guy does ecstasy and that guy does coke and, that guy does Oxycontin and blah, blah, blah. And, I saw the drug dealers and I was like, oh, everybody's calling them. Everybody wants to know, where's Ray Ray? And I was like, well, that really sounds like a way to attract people. And for somebody who hasn't been taught like normal social skills, I was like, okay, well, that's what I gotta do. I gotta sell drugs. I gotta bring people to me. I need friends. And because I didn't know how to make friends or how to be social or whatever, that's what I started doing. I started selling drugs, mostly weed and mushrooms and ecstasy. And then I started hearing everybody about doing Oxycontin. I was like, oh, well, what's this? And then I went and got surgery. and they prescribed me Oxycontin. I was like, oh, okay. So I took it. I was like, oh, wow, this feeling is freaking incredible. This is kind of everything that I've ever dreamed of. I got the rush of dopamine and serotonin and everything, and I felt like I felt like somebody had held me for the first time, like really held me, like, hey, everything's gonna be okay. Which is what dopamine does. When you flood the brain with dopamine, it gives you that false sense of, hey, I love you, I'm here, everything's okay. I give you that warm, fuzzy feeling in your heart, and let me give you a big old hug. I was like, this is it. This is it for me. This is what I've been searching for, you know?
Did you
Um,
know that right off the bat, Quinn? Sorry to interrupt you, but like, did that occur, or was that with self introspection down the road? That
it
like,
was the first time I abused it. And it was like, this is it.
yeah, yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
this is what I've been searching for.
Okay.
Um, and so I started, selling drugs, doing everything else, trying to, find a way to make friends, be all these things. I placed my entire independence on this drug of making friends, of masking, of being able to, feel accepted and validation, and to also numb the pain of the trauma, the molestation and everything. It made me forget. I was able to just, nod out and kind of go blank for a little bit. I was like, this is everything I've been wanting to escape. I've been wanting to numb. I've been wanting to, I didn't want to tell everybody that I had been molested, that I freaking felt abandoned, that I didn't have a dad growing up, It allowed me to
Yeah.
put that mask on. And so by the time I turned 18, I had done heroin for the first time shortly after my 18th birthday. And
Jeez.
at that point, I was like, okay, like I found an even cheaper way of getting the feeling that I need, that I'm looking for. And for years and years and years, I didn't want to get sober. I was like, this is it. This is the answer for me.
Yeah.
And for that time, I was like, I don't need your help. Why would I get into rehab? You're trying to take away from me the only thing that's ever given me any relief.
Yeah.
I have a
Yeah.
question.
Now I'm years into my addiction. Now you want to come and ask me or tell me that I need to get my life together? Where were you when I was 11 or 12 and I was lost, having suicidal thoughts?
Wow.
So I
Okay.
was like, I don't want to listen to it. I'm not going to hear you guys out. I'm not going to get sober. You guys weren't there for me. This thing was here for me. So I don't want your help.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
With your recovery and, Cali sober being such a huge thing, how much of a role did weed play in your earlier years and through your addiction and stuff like that? Like, was
It's a
it
great
there or
question.
was it just,
It's a great question. I started smoking weed. Smoking weed was my first thing. Um, I tried weed before I tried anything else, and I tried it a couple times and was like, yeah, it's okay. It's all right. I didn't smoke weed because liked the way it felt. I smoked weed because I felt like I was part of the group
yeah,
for doing it. It's like, oh, well, my friends are doing it, and if I start to say, if I say, hey, I want to smoke, or if I'm the one that's got the bag, then they're gonna call me and be like, oh, I know. We're 16 years old. We were lucky to get $50, and when we got $50, we buy a whole eighth of weed, and then it's like, oh, well, Quinn's got it, or and so everybody be in my house.
Now they say like
Um,
addiction chemically changes our brain. Like it changes it
mhm.
completely. So you didn't really like it before. So what made you make that decision to include it in your recovery?
It took 18 years of trying to figure out what was going on in my mind, in my brain, psychologically, from even a chemical standpoint, like the dopamine, the serotonin, the chemicals that are being released. I really had to understand what was going on before it finally clicked, and I was like, oh,
Mhm.
that's why I felt warm when I did opiates, or that's why I felt, this rush of everything's gonna be okay when I abuse substances, or that's why when I'm driving down the street that my dope boy lives in on, my first thought is, oh, take a right here, pull into Ray Ray's house.
Yeah.
Understanding neurological passages and how a habit is formed, those kinds of things. And it took me 18 years of finding out what didn't work for me before I found out that, hey, I have a mental health condition that is caused by a dopamine deficiency. So no matter what I do, if I go abstinent, my brain is always going to be looking for the excitement, the dopamine,
Yeah.
just to feel normal. And when I tried every other method, and every other method had led me to being homeless or doing home invasions or robbing people or freaking whatever, I was like, well, marijuana gives me just enough dopamine for me to feel like my mental health is managed and that I got
Yeah.
enough dopamine where I can function as a normal person, but not abuse it, because everything else, the Xanax or the freaking Adderall or the, whatever, was too much for me. It's too reminiscent of what I was trying to use to escape.
No. And are you in Utah?
Yeah, I'm in Utah
Well, how-
currently. I live in New York though.
Okay. How did it? Because there's so many different types of weed out now with it being regulated, and you can find it at dispensaries and stuff like that. Like,
Mhm.
can you tell us about like I know quite a bit, but I'm gonna have you explain it, like the different strands and the different percentages of THC, and using smoking weed compared to an edible, compared to tinctures and stuff like that. Like, do you want to explain
Right.
the difference between all that stuff?
Yeah, I'd love to real quick just kind of finish up
Sorry.
the topic that I was talking about. So, once I got to age 25 and I had used everything under the sun, I was like, I was selling drugs out of my mom's house, and I woke up with this pain in my groin, like unbelievable pain. So I go to the hospital. They tell me, hey, you have a testicular torsion. You need operation. Blah blah blah. So I was like, go ahead and operate. So they operate. They hit me with the adrenaline to wake me up from the anesthesia, and because I had done drugs previously, the cocaine in my system and the adrenaline reacted together. I blew my coronary artery, went into cardiac arrest, had a couple of heart attacks. They were like, this kid's not gonna make it. So I was in a coma for 6 days, and so they call my family. They're like, come say goodbye to your kid. Like, he's gone.
Oh,
Like, I was unresponsive. I was on 100% life support. Most people who have some kind of life-threatening thing, there's a level of life support, whether it's, intubated or oxygen or freaking pumping, your heart like a balloon pump. I was on 100%. Most people aren't on 100%. So I was like, okay, I wake up out of the coma. They're like, you should be dead. Like, I don't know how you even came out of that coma, but you've done so much damage to your heart. We give you about 6 months to live. So I was like, okay, well, let me go and spend these last 6 months with my family. Then I get to Georgia because I moved out of Utah. My mom was like, you got to come back to Georgia with me because you're gonna die. I want you to be with me for the next 6 months. It's like, okay, get back to Georgia. I was like, no, I'm gonna spend the rest of these last 6 months escaping, numbing, masking, validating, whatever. I go out, and every freaking day past this 6 month mark, I'm like, I should be dead. Like, and in my mind, I'm like, I'm just gonna go all out. Like, I'm either gonna die from relapse or overdose, or I'm gonna end up in prison and die in prison anyway. Whatever. So I just went hard for the next like 8 years, and I'm sitting here thinking every day is gonna be my last. I ended up in Atlanta, Georgia, sitting on the edge of this bed, trying to find a vein for 45 minutes because I had used up all my veins. They were all collapsed, abscesses, this and that and the rest. And I'm trying to shoot up for 45 minutes. I finally get it to register, go to push it back in, it clogs. I'm freaking already in pain. I'm already in withdrawal. Just lose my mind. God, why me? Like, take my life or give me strength because I can't do this anymore. And I'm bawling. My emotions are high. My vibrational frequency is at a high point. And in that moment, I think I hit a high vibrational frequency that reached my higher power, and my higher power gave me that strength and was like, get your life together, man. So I went and got into sober living, did 9 months of abstinence.
Oh.
Because I have ADHD, I hyper focused on the big book. I wanted to know everything about the big book. Who wrote it? When did he write it? How did he get there? What's up? Like, what are the steps? What are the traditions? What are these stories in the back? What is the program? And I was that big book thumper. I was like, I was showing everybody, I was sponsoring people, I was doing the steps, did my inventory, carrying the message. Here I am 9 months later, carrying the message to those who still suffer, and I'm still white knuckling. And I'm sitting here, man, Bill Wilson, what the F is up, man? Where's this spiritual awakening I was promised? Because I've been doing the steps. I've been freaking doing my inventory. I've been sponsoring people, service work, doing freaking a meeting. I was doing like 5 meetings a week. And I'm sitting here, where's my spiritual awakening? And the way that people were talking about it in the rooms, they were like, oh yeah, your higher power is gonna freaking grant you relief from this obsession. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, just like in The Lion King, Mufasa's gonna come out from the clouds and be like, Quinn, like, let me relieve you, So I'm waiting for my higher power to show up and freaking relieve me of this obsession, just like Bill Wilson promised. So here I am. I'm like, freaking white knuckling everything. Leave the AA meeting, get on my motorcycle that's not registered. I don't have a license, no insurance, bad plate on the bike, and I drive home. On my way home, I'm going 123 miles an hour, and boom, I get lit up by the cops. Lead them on a high-speed chase, end up crashing my motorcycle. Luckily, I didn't die, and ended up right back in jail with 9 months of pure abstinence. So while I'm in jail, I'm thinking, bro, you're not sober. You can take out all the freaking medications you want, but you're not sober. A sober mind does not not pay their insurance and then drive a motorcycle without a license, without a registration. I'm like, you're not sober, dude. Say what you want, but you're not sober. You might be clean, but you're not sober.
Not in recovery.
Right.
What did we say last week? You can't live a clean life doing dirty things.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's what I was like, what's going on here? I get out of jail 30 days later. I lost my spot in sober living. Basically had nowhere to go out in Savannah, Georgia. And I'm like, well, I met this guy over here in jail, and like he's in here because he freaking had a relapse, but he's now got 30 days. Like, let's try and make this, let me try and make this work. I get out, he starts using, I start using, boom, right back into full-blown relapse within the next 30 days. Spent another year and some change in relapse, and once I hit my final rock bottom, where I'm contemplating killing my drug dealers, my sister shows up and is like, get your stuff, let's go. It's like, okay. So I go and get sober again at my sister's house. My sister's a yoga instructor, very spiritual, talks about frequency, chi, yoga, freaking all the things. She starts teaching me about vibrational frequency and opening yourself up to, things that exist on that frequency. And things just kind of started to make sense to me. Like, yeah, I've been on the low vibrational frequency of shame and guilt and depression. And so by the law of attraction, I'm automatically attracting those things to me. And it kind of made sense. Like, yeah, man, of course you're going to get robbed. Of course you're going to freaking have somebody call you and tell you freaking some bad news, because that's the vibrational frequency you exist on. So I'm like, okay, I start learning about spirituality, all this stuff. And I'm still smoking weed during this process. So I came to one conclusion. Weed is not my issue. I'm not going to sell my sister's freaking TV out from under her nose and then lie to her about it and say somebody must have freaking broken and robbed us. I'm not going to freaking do some stupid things over weed. So I'm like, okay, that I know about myself. I don't think that it's the same for everybody. There's some people who out there who understand, who know their self, and it is like, hey, that's my limit. Is I know I can't even do that. And I think that's great. I think everybody's recovery is different. So once I got to that point, I was like, okay, weed's okay. I'm not going to go and, relapse over weed. So start here, but I'm still, my anxiety is managed through marijuana. My depression is managed, somewhat through marijuana, but not like to the point where it's non-existent. I start hearing about psilocybin, disassociatives. I heard about ketamine therapy. I heard about ayahuasca and ibogaine, and I was like, wait, what is this brain reset? Because that's what I need. I'm 18 years into my addiction, and I just need to get rid of this whole brain. This whole way of thinking's got to go. So how do I get that ego death that brings me back to a point of like, this is where we were when we went wrong. So I started looking into it. I started, okay, ketamine, ayahuasca, ibogaine. Like, I don't have $2,000 for that stuff, but I can get some mushrooms. Started doing some research into mushrooms. You can get that same experience through mushrooms. So I was like, I've done mushrooms hundreds of times. Never have I used it in a healing setting. So let me just try, because I'm not scared. And at this point, it's like, they say, when you know, right? And at this point, I was like, I know. No matter what happens, I'm not going to go back to doing coke or heroin. That's just it for me. So I can try this. And if I don't like it, cool. But the promise that I'm keeping to myself is that I won't relapse on coke or heroin ever again. So I said, okay. So I went into this journey. Oh, I think we lost Ryan. So I went into this journey.
I'm still here.
Okay.
Yeah, your camera's off, buddy. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's froze.
Okay.
So I went into this
Don't worry
journey.
about me. Don't worry about me.
Went into this journey thinking like, whatever happens, I'll be okay. So I go through the journey, and I was able to disassociate from self, my body from mind, and look at the story of my life from an actual third person. For once I was like, hey, I'm not judging me. I'm the third person looking in at like my younger self and my current self, and where did we go wrong? I finally do all, I go through the motions of going through, all the traumatic events in my life and all the molestation, the abandonment and everything. And I'm doing this with my younger self. We're sitting there hugging, we're crying, we're freaking going through all these moments. And I went through the 5 stages of grief with my younger self right there on that journey. We get to the 5th stage of acceptance and understanding. I said, okay, so what do we do now? Do we continue to let what happened to us rule our lives, or do we push forward? And I said, I want to push forward. I'm tired. I'm tired of freaking wanting to escape, wanting to mask, wanting to validate. I just want to be me. I'm just so tired. I'm just going to be me. And if nobody likes it, then whatever. I'm here for me now. So I said, okay, let's move forward. So now there's no stigma on whether, marijuana is sober or whatever it is that I decide that I'm going to do. I just said, I'm not going to follow that stigma. I'm going to do me and what I know is right for me. Yeah. And what that takes is a lot of honesty with yourself. Does this actually help?
Honesty, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
does this actually help?
The addict's brain is going to try and find a way in with that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's something I struggled with. Am I using mushrooms to escape, or am I using mushrooms to heal? And that's where I came up with like, am I going to refuse? Am I going to refuse morphine if I freaking break my femur in an accident and I tell the doctor, oh, don't give me that because I'm freaking, I'm a recovering addict. And in my head, I was like, no, I can't do that. What if I have a kid someday and that kid's got allergies or ADHD? My kid has ADHD and I have to dispense Adderall, and I got to tell my kid, nope, you can't be on Adderall because daddy's got a drug problem. And if there's Adderall in the house, I'm going to take them from my kid. I was like, I will not accept that. That is not me. I can't do that. So I need to face whatever it is that I need to face that gives me the feeling that I'm getting something that I want from these substances. I'm like, okay, so let's just go and say nobody else's opinion matters. What do we do from here on out? Okay, so we push forward. So now I get 11 months of sobriety, of Cali sober, and I say, okay, I think this is working. I've been offered coke 4 times, and I've said no every time. In the previous years, I would never have turned down free coke. So something's working, because I also found a whole needle of heroin in one of my old jackets, and I looked at it and I cried. I had a breakup with this drug. It's like, I love you so freaking much. The times that we had, at the beginning it was great. Then you took everything from me. Then you made me feel worthless. Then you hurt me. The physical pain, the emotional pain, everything you took from me. I love the way you make me feel, but I know we're no good for each other. So this is the last time I ever want to see you. And I flushed it down the toilet. I squirted it down the toilet, freaking broke the needle off, threw it away. I was like, okay, so that was my breakup. That was like the closure from that drug. So now I've thrown away heroin that I could have easily used. I've refused coke 4 different times. I start to analyze like everything. So somebody offers me ecstasy at a rave. Is this am I right? Would I do this to heal or would I do this to escape? This isn't a healing moment. This isn't an appropriate setting. You know what I mean? Like, this is like, from now on, I will not be using in anything that's not an appropriate setting. I'm not going to refuse morphine if I break my femur, but I am going to freaking refuse, doing freaking cocaine at the bar, at some bar in the bathroom at some bar, because that's not, there's no point. So that kind of clicked for me, is that I have found what works for me. And I don't think that my way, the way that I recover is fitting for everybody.
Yeah.
I think that everybody's recovery is different. And if we really observe the traditional recovery, abstinence, we usually when we're talking about traditional recovery, we're talking about from the standpoint of AA, which is an abstinence-based program. If you've sponsored somebody, you realize, well, John over here has come up to me and asked to be my sponsee, but he is on Adderall because he's got ADHD. Okay, I can work with you because you're honest with me, because you've got somebody dispensing your meds or whatever. So you're in the rooms claiming sobriety, but you're on ADHD meds. Well, it's all right. It's all right. You're prescribed. As long as you're not abusing, you're prescribed, you're being honest, transparent, we can work with that. Oh, you're on Suboxone? We can work with that. Oh, you're on Wellbutrin? We can work with that. So then I'm like, all these people in here are either going unmanaged for their mental health. They simply don't have mental health conditions, so they don't need medications. So there's no reason why you should be taking medications. It's not the appropriate setting. Or they're lying about it. Or they're being shamed into thinking that you're not sober unless you're abstinent. And what that's doing for people who are in early recovery is making them choose between your mental health and being abstinent by the terms of AA. And for me, when you read the AA literature and it says, hey, these are outside issues. If you have a medical condition, nobody in this room can tell you stop taking your medications, because nobody in here is a doctor. Nobody sat here and freaking evaluated you for 2 hours and made you take tests and do all these things. So I'm not going to tell you to stop using a medication because I'm not a doctor. And so I was like, I started to notice that even by the laws of AA, most of the people weren't even abstinent by their own definition. So I was like, okay, so everybody's basically just choosing what their limit is. Whether it's caffeine or nicotine or freaking hyperventilating or Suboxone or methadone or ADHD medication or Wellbutrin for freaking, for bipolar disorder or borderline personality disorder. So everybody's just kind of freaking doing what is working for them. So I was like, okay, well then that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to pick and choose the things that I know work for me. What do I know? I know I'm not going to relapse on marijuana. I know that if I freaking do some stupid stuff, like go out to a party and freaking I do coke, that's not appropriate. I know where my limit is, and I think that everybody kind of gets to a place where they're like, hey, I did this and that didn't work because that led me back to relapse. Now I did this, I did that, and that's what I did for 18 years. I found out what didn't work for me until I finally was like, right? What's that?
I said, so now you found something that has worked, and that's wonderful.
Right.
The rooms is something that I've noticed. So on the podcast, when we have people that are hardcore 12-steppers, I get armored up right away about that 12-step or no-step mentality, that does happen or has happened a lot in the past. I think, and I don't know, it seems to me very anecdotally, because I don't know a whole ton of people, in the US, I don't know that it's come as far as it has in Canada, because I get armored up for this, ready to go to battle with somebody that's like 12-step or no step, and because I'm not a 12-stepper, not that I have anything against 12-step, it wasn't my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And not once have I had a guest come on the show that's been like 12-step or no step, but I just get ready for it all the time. It's like this preconceived notion that we're guilty of because we're not, you know, like a part of that community. That I think the shift has focused now, or like the stigma has focused away from that, the way that we perceive 12 steps and how rigid they are. In yourself, is that being kind of a face of Cali Sober, if you will, if not the face, do you find that that's still a really hardcore thing, or do you find that there's more acceptance to that from people that are 12 stepping?
That's an awesome question, man. I love that. So it's kind of location to location, you know. I've been since getting sober, I've gone to meetings where, you know, being that I learned AA the traditional way through abstinence, that if you're a guest from a different city or whatever, or if this is your first time, or, you know, or if you're a newcomer, typically the consensus is like, you're not here to talk, you're here to listen, you're here to learn. Until you've got, you know, a couple days, at least a week, you're like in here, then you can freaking talk. That was what was instilled at my AA class. Like, if you're a guest, you know, you wait until at the end of the meeting, and then when we say, hey, are there any guests here, then you can talk. So you know, I was doing that whole thing. I'm not going to talk because I'm a guest here, and the way that I recover isn't traditional AA, so I'm not going to say anything. Wait till the end of the meeting. Some guy walks up to me, hey, man, how you doing? You know, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, you know, I just didn't really talk because I'm Cali sober. I still smoke weed. And he's like, oh, it's cool, man. We got people in here who are Cali sober too. So it really depends on the location. That would not have flown at my old place. But you know, it's starting to be more acceptable. Yes. And I think
fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah.
And I think it's the idea that, and it's mostly, you know, it's mostly people who are pretty new into their recovery, you know, under a year, where they're, you know, they understand like, oh yeah, Jim's on freaking Adderall for his ADHD. So why isn't it okay that you know, smoke a little marijuana? I'd rather have you smoke a marijuana than be on a medication that's physically addictive.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, cool.
I think you said something really important too, Quinn, is that it's a lot of accountability and a lot of responsibility to go from being, you know, an addict to using something to help you stay sober.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot of responsibility to figure that out and make sure you're not crossing those lines and, you know, stealing your sister's TV and going to sell it for
right.
You know.
Right. And like I said earlier, I would hesitate to tell people, and I'm glad that you are, but myself personally, I'm just like, do you say that to somebody that's in early recovery? I've only got a year under my belt, so I'm early by most standards, right? You know, realistically. I just like, do you feel that that's risky to say that to somebody that's in early recovery and say it's up to you to figure out what's going to work for you? Or, I mean, you came out of the gate saying abstinence is really important off the get-go, but so
I think, that's absolutely. I think that early on in recovery, we need guidance, right? Because our brain hasn't recovered from the trauma, from the substance abuse, like you just mentioned. You know, your brain is going to try and trick you in any which way to make excuses to escape. And so that, you know, that honesty and transparency with myself was something that developed for 18 years, you know, of lying to myself and making excuses and manipulating and deceiving and doing all these things. And then once I was like, I've had enough. I have to. So I was only 3 months into my recovery this last time before I, you know, was like, okay, let me try, you know, let me see if different things work. But
you're 3 months by traditional standards into your recovery,
right?
Because recovery is not linear, right? And I think that's really important. It's one of probably the biggest reason I'm on 12-step, because if I relapse, I lose this last year. No. So yes, you are 3 months into a traditional definition of recovery,
right?
But every day, every minute that you had in recovery previous to that doesn't go away in my mind, right?
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, that's, you know, that's recovery. Like I was in
Yeah.
recovery from the day that I decided, hey, you know what, I'm done escaping, because like I mentioned, you know, there was a time I didn't want to stop. So once
Yes.
there was a
Yes.
time where I was like, okay, I do want to stop.
Mhm.
Then from that point on, it was probably another like 10 years of addiction where I was like trying to
In and
figure it
out.
out.
Yeah.
Rehab over here, detox over there. You know, I had a year of abstinence. I had almost 2 years at one point, just smoking and whatever. And then, you know, I wasn't working a program, or so I didn't really understand. Like, I was still the same person. Didn't have the right
kidding.
coping skills. Didn't have, you know, the confidence or the independence that I needed to like figure
Yeah.
it out for myself.
Gotcha.
Um,
If you don't mind again here, Quinn,
go ahead, yeah.
you had said something about the higher frequency, and it's something that Ryan and I were literally just talking about as we recorded next Wednesday's episode. Ryan, you picked up on that too, that correlation there with the existential vacuum? Your microphone's muted, buddy. Yeah. So just so we can get some input from Ryan on this, because I think you'll really appreciate some of this perspective. It's kind of a different way of saying what you were saying, Quinn. So Ryan, if you want to jump in on that, maybe.
Well, there's just so much there.
Yeah, okay, maybe on that part specifically, or whatever. Go ahead. I mean, do your thing.
Well, so like, you know, energy frequency, it's how the universe works. So the entire universe is a series of organisms getting energy from other organisms, whether it be violently or like the fact that all of our plants on Earth are green is because that's the color of the sun, and it gets its energy from the sun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like when we think about how we interact and how we operate on a daily basis, it is completely dependent on what energy or frequency we're carrying ourselves at. And so and you know, it's like, you know, like what's the book, The Secret, like that's kind of a butcher job of that understanding. But you know, so when we talk about existential vacuum is in essence low energy frequency living. And so that's why we're attracted to drama. We're attracted to shameful sexual experiences. We're attracted to boredom, gossip, cops, Ricky Lake, Jerry Springer. Jerry Springer. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, why am I watching this shit? Oh, it's because I'm really.
Kids don't know Ricky Lake.
right, of course, yeah. Clearly born in the 70s. Yeah, like, so from a fulfillment perspective, like, and I know like there's a guy, I think he's out from out here. He wrote a book called The New Earth that is all really about this and about, you know, the ego's role and how the ego impacts our ability to access different frequencies of energy in the way we carry ourselves. Ultimately, vulnerability gives us access to choice. From choice, we can choose what frequency we want to live our life out of. If we are unable to be vulnerable, we're unable to be exposed to the world, therefore not receiving anything but predetermined or prehistoric energy, which would be my history, and my history doesn't have very high level of energy frequency in it. So that's where I go as a set point, you know. And so like high energy frequency attracts high energy frequency. This is why it's like, you know, we talked about the you know, people at the podium with the war stories, and like these days I got no time, like, you know what I mean, because that's a low energy frequency, and I'm not attracted to that anymore. I carry myself up here, and with that I attract the like-minded or the like organisms, really, because it's really at a molecular level.
To talk about that for a second, Quinn, in the episode we just recorded that comes out Wednesday, we were talking about this very thing throughout the entire episode. What the correlation for me happened was the show used to be about recovery stories. You want to get all the gory details, and you think that that's what the world wants to hear. You know, I did something. I house invaded this guy, and I used to have keys coming from overseas and all this shit, right?
Yeah, it's just literally just
right, all of that stuff.
I got keys from overseas.
Just had to, right? Yeah, keys coming from overseas. Anyway,
again,
and then as my life began to improve, because for the first 10 months of this podcast, right, I was not in a very good place. I mean, I was sober and I've been doing good and I've been building the platform, but internally I had a ton of work to do. What shifts the moment I decided to come to Thailand and start a serious healing journey? Yoga is a big part of my routine here now, like at the Ultra. So you're talking about these things, right? The moment I decided to do that, and I didn't realize it until we were recording and talking about it earlier today, was that now I'm not interested in the gory stories anymore. I don't like, you know what I mean? Like, I want to talk about like what's happening now. How are we recovering together? What's alternative recovery methods? Whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
That's that existential vacuum. Now that I'm in a good place, I want to hear good things. I'm not attracted to those negative things, right? And I like to think that the audience, that there's an appetite for that. That might be me projecting what I'm reflecting now, right? Because I'm feeling better. I think everybody else wants to hear this shit too. Maybe they still do want to hear all the gory details, but I'm not going to play to it. Right?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Just based on what we were talking about earlier, where do you think identifying as an addict, as a moniker, as a label, where do you think that falls on the spectrum of the energy field? And that and
solid question.
Here's one reason. This is one reason I don't identify as an addict.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I believe strongly in self-fulfilling prophecy. There's actually a lot of psychological experiments on self-fulfilling prophecy. Mm-hmm. You tell somebody who's in prison, you're gonna be a screw up your whole life. Yeah, I'm gonna see you right back here in 6 months. You're just a freaking criminal. You know, once you start to, and then you got all these other people saying, "Oh, this is what you are." So in your brain, you're like, "That's all they expect of me is to be an addict." So they don't expect me to be sober. They don't expect me to be a good Samaritan. They don't expect me to be on time. They don't expect me to show up, you know, to Thanksgiving dinner, you know, sober. You know, so once I have the idea that everybody else only has the expectation of me of an addict, then I start to tell myself, oh, well, I'm an addict. Then I start to think in my head, well, nobody really expects much more of me. And that's just, and they've done the psychological experiment in prisons. You tell a prisoner he's going to be a prisoner for the rest of his life, he starts to believe it. Who's he going to let down? Yeah. You guys already expect me to be a prisoner. You guys already expect me to be a drug addict. So if I relapse, who did I let down? You already said it yourself. I'm an addict. So no big deal, right? So self-fulfilling prophecy is very important to me. I haven't identified as an addict for 3 years.
Jesus, with these conversations, I'm telling you, Jared, we could have done an entire month on how long am I an addict? Right?
I know.
I haven't identified as an addict in at least a decade. Yeah, and and so like what you're speaking to is like so bang. But I speak about this from a social tapestry perspective as a way that we mitigate our access to choice, and choice is our sense of freedom. Now, if I really think about what my goal is in this existence, it really has nothing to do with sobriety. It never did. It's just that, you know, in some cases, sobriety, it becomes a conduit to find that thing. And for me, it's peace on a daily basis. I want to experience peace, contentment. Well, happiness is an emotion. It's not sustainable. So to be happy all the time will be to be disappointed because you have an expectation of happiness. And, but peace is a state of being. It's something that we can put with an emotion to carry ourselves. So I can be peaceful and sad. I can be peaceful and happy. I can't be peaceful and angry because anger is not an emotion. It's a shield. It's a defense mechanism. So I can't attach to that. You know what I mean? And so when we have all of this stuff telling, like, I mean, if I lived out the script of my life, then I'm probably not alive right now. You know, and the tapestry had informed me that I'm poor white trash. You know, and like I actually turns out I have a lot of indigenous blood in me, but
two of the three anyway.
yeah, you know what I mean. And like, and I believe that, but until I made choice, and that choice gave me the freedom to open myself up to an access to potential that I never knew existed. And I decided that, you know, like honestly, when I was in recovery, it's like the doctor gives me some pills. He says take 2 every 4 hours. Of course, that means I take 4 every 2 hours. You know what I mean? And like, so when I look around,
it took me a second there. Yeah. Go back and listen to that again, guys. You missed it, but it was subtle.
Of course it would. You know, but then I look at like, man, I've been, you know, so it really, when the stigma started to really build within the community, this is when I'm out of it now, but I'm still working at a treatment center, so I hear a lot about this stuff. And there, you know, you're not clean because you're on OATS, opiate antagonist therapy. And I'm like, fuck you. Pardon me. Okay, can I swear on this one? But you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we have.
Like, you know. And so, and then I'm like, wow, okay, well, if that's the way it is, I drink coffee. I smoke cigarettes. Cannabis. I'm not a stranger to. You know what I mean? And so, like, have I ever been sober? Really? Based on what you guys are saying, what the definition is? And
Right.
so I'm like, you know what? The goal for me was never sobriety to begin with. Every time I made it a goal, I always failed.
Mhm.
I ended up perpetuating that exact disaster. And so I shifted to peace and contentment. And now the world is open to possibility,
Yeah.
because I took back my identity from, and I was the same guy, man. Big book. You give me a sentence out of a book and I could name the page it was on. You know what I mean? Out of the big book. And
Yeah.
like, that is not who I want to be. It never was. And to me, that was another mask. So I created another persona, which is a Greek word for mask, to really trick you into thinking I am what you think you want me to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, that is empty and exhausting.
Yeah.
So, screw it. Like, I live in my own autonomy. I have so much power within my world, in my reality, that I decide what gets power, what doesn't, what gets in, what doesn't. I decide who I am. You don't ever. You can have inform me. If you've earned the right to have an opinion on who I am, then absolutely I'll listen to it and I'll probably take it to heart. But if you haven't earned that right, then I don't give a damn what you say. To be honest with you, life is too short for me to worry about what you're thinking.
Yeah. I love that you said that it opens yourself up to possibilities, because I think that like labels restrict us, right? Like when I say, hey, let's just say for a second, this is the first time we meet and I say, hi, my name's Quinn, and I'm an addict. You already in your mind, you have the stigma that's placed upon us, right? Whereas if I say, hi, my name's Quinn, I'm in recovery, there's a cap. There's a cap to like being an addict, right? Well, if you're an addict, you can't be sober. If you're an addict, you freaking are not trustworthy. If you're an addict, you're, doing all the things that addicts do: stealing, lying, manipulating, deceiving, all the rest. Saying I'm in recovery has no cap. You can always be in recovery. It opens up the possibilities of being like, hey, I'm in recovery and I'm trying abstinence right now. If this doesn't work, I'll go and see my therapist. Maybe I need to be on medications, but I'm trying this right now. I'm in recovery. There's no cap. There's no limit to what recovery means.
I can hear Ryan's about to split some hairs on that one. I can just see you doing it.
Little Wayne said the other day, we all live in the same building but have different views.
Right. But we do have a PSA we got to get to, right?
Yeah.
And maybe some comments too if they're coming in, right?
Oh, we're like
right.
45 minutes past our PSA.
I don't mean to cut you off, Ryan. I don't, but I know we gotta, we gotta get into those too, right?
I'm used to it.
The watchers, listeners, and supporters, right? So, okay.
Well, we'll be right back after this quick PSA.
The following PSA is brought to you by The Phoenix. The Phoenix is not just a gym, it's a community where the real weight lifted is not just barbells, but hearts, minds, and spirits. Whether you're in recovery or simply choose to live a sober lifestyle, The Phoenix offers a range of activities from yoga to hiking, all led by people who've walked the path of transformation. So why not aim higher with The Phoenix? The first membership requirement is just 48 hours of sobriety. Rise from the ashes and soar with The Phoenix today. Do you know about naloxone, otherwise known as Narcan? This life-saving medication can reverse an opioid overdose in minutes. You might think, I don't need it, I'm not around opioids. But the truth is, you never know when you'll be in a situation where you could save a life. It's easy to use, and in many places offer it for free or at a low cost. So let's be prepared and look out for each other. Remember, you might not plan on being around opioid use, but you never know when it will be around you, and you could save the life of somebody that loves and is loved. I'm Chuck LaFlange with the Ashes to Awesome podcast, and remember, you are loved.
There we go. Yeah. So,
Do you
By the
know,
way-
I was sitting there word for word. You're doing the PSA.
Have it in both ears.
She's over there laughing at me because I go word for word. I'm like, yep.
you see it enough times, right? But honestly, you can't say that enough to people. In my mind, like that PSA, there's been long episodes where I've run like 2 different PSAs. I've just given it to different sponsors, but like you can't tell people enough. Like, please carry Narcan, please.
Yeah.
Right. I had a really good example of that to hijack the conversation again here. I did a memorial episode with Joy out of I think she's in Texas or somewhere down there. She lost her son to a drug poisoning. 4 years later, she's at home, looks out the window, and there's like a backup of traffic at a stop sign in a residential neighborhood. She's like, what the hell's going on out there? She goes out and looks, and there's somebody slumped over at their steering wheel at a stop sign out front of her house. She's got Narcan in the house. Doesn't she go out and save this guy's life? Right. So you just don't know. Right. You just don't know when you could save somebody's life.
And that's why like it's so important for us to play the PSA, because we want to make sure every episode gets up there. But we have a lot of comments really quick.
Let's get to some comments.
Just really quick before we hop on to the next phase of it.
Hey Quinn,
Quickly, I want to apologize
in the comments too.
What, Ryan?
I just wanted to apologize for my
Was that
technical
you?
difficulties. I sucked.
Oh, okay. So
Now, what were you saying to Quinn?
I thanked him for saying hi to me in the comments.
Oh,
Did I?
yeah.
Fine. Oh.
Yeah, hi, Brianna.
That was you.
I appreciate it.
Hi.
Who's getting a lot of highs?
Who's
Who's
I'm not
reading the
gonna do it.
comments
I'm not gonna
today?
do it. Yeah. Okay. I can't see them, so if you pull them up, I'm more than happy to read one or two. But
Well, that's what I'm saying. Who's gonna read them?
We fixed our screen now.
For majority of that, I had a big white thing in between, and I couldn't see you guys. All I could do was just. So that's why I was down, like checking everything. I'm like, how the hell do I get this thing off?
I thought you were just checking out of the conversation and being rather rude. Actually, is what I thought.
No,
So-
no.
No.
I'm
We were
doing that,
listening.
and she's monitoring the comments.
Okay. Well, here I'll read a couple off then. Right.
All right.
Maybe I'll do.
I'm throwing
go
one
voice
up
for
on
one of
here
them.
real quick. All right.
I can't see the. Oh, I see it now. Okay. Chrissy Squires says she's in West Virginia checking in 25 plus prescription pills, sober with cannabis for 4 years. Right.
Nice.
Thank you, Chrissy.
There you go.
Thank you.
Heck yeah.
Right.
Congratulations. I'm
sober with
glad you found
cannabis
what works
is-
for you.
Sober for you. Right. That's.
Yeah.
Yeah. I often say that the right method is the one that's working for you. Right. I don't really
Yeah.
give a shit. Right?
I
So,
had a conversation with one of the guests I just had on last week, Jeff Canada. He's gonna be a good one. He's a country singer, and he was saying that he used to be on like 5+ prescription medications, and cannabis has helped him be completely off of all of those. So it's
how
just
can
one
you,
of
how
those
can you
things.
argue that unless it's coming from a moral standpoint? How can you argue that?
Exactly. Just wanted to. I don't think he's in here anymore, but Matt Keegan
Matt,
was in here, so
Okay.
What's up, Matt?
he just say yo.
I know Matt.
You
He's
know who
in
Matt
the-
is there, Quinn?
I
He's
do.
in the
Matt is
emergency room right now.
Yep, Matt
he's
is
joining us
a
little bit.
advocacy for abstinence, but Matt and I have talked, and we both,
Respectful.
respect each
Yeah,
other's recovery path. So that's I really love that. I love getting getting people who understand that recovery isn't linear, like you said.
Yeah. Right. So.
Addict with the Purpose was in the building.
What's up, Rachel?
Hey, I've been following her along. I've been meaning to reach out to her too. So if you're not still in the building, sorry I missed you there.
Yeah, her name's Rachel.
Yeah,
Okay,
she just linked last night. She just scheduled to come on the show. So
Nice.
Oh,
Heck
hey,
yeah.
good
I
news.
love that.
It's crazy how small of a world this whole thing is, eh? Yeah.
yeah, it is.
So hey, Power, so glad you made it out. Love hearing your story, and I haven't heard it in full. This is great from Rachel at Addict with Purpose. So yeah,
Chuck, can I read this one?
most certainly you can. Yes.
I have to lean in so I can read it.
Oh, don't say it. Fuck sakes.
Joshua said tinctures are a safe way to dose medically. You can also adjust the cannabinoids, right? Is that how I say it?
Cannabinoid.
Cannabinoids.
Yeah.
More easily in tinctures from CNB, CBG, CBC, THC, CBD can all be added or taken away to adjust that physical response. Oh, can't see the
Just
bottom.
read the screen.
I can't see that part.
Most
In any of those cases, be aware you are replacing.
hold
I
on, there you
can't
go. There you go. You can see it now.
Thank you. In any of these cases, be aware you are replacing your drug of choice with cannabis. Most people in recovery seek and need complete abstinence to remain sober.
Yeah, I agree with 90% of that.
Yeah.
Most people in recovery seek and need complete abstinence to remain sober. I would disagree with that. Just being a sponsor, who sponsored many people, where I realized 60% of my sponsees were on medications while still claiming abstinence. So most people in recovery seek and need complete abstinence. The truth is, and the statistics prove it, that abstinence doesn't work for the majority of people. So although I agree with everything that Joshua said here, abstinence actually is proven to not work, especially for people with mental health. Because like I stated earlier, we're making people choose between abstinence and having their mental health managed. If I tell you, hey, you're not sober because you have bipolar disorder and you're on Wellbutrin. Wellbutrin is a mind or mood altering substance, so you're not sober. Then you're telling that person, okay, so I've got to ditch the Wellbutrin. So here I go back into my manic episodes. And what happens in manic episodes? You're more likely to make impulse decisions. What are those impulse decisions to somebody early in recovery? Relapse. So abstinence is proven that it does not work for everybody, and it definitely does not work for the majority of people. It does work for some people, and I think it's amazing for those who do.
A better way to say that is, in my recovery, I seek and needed abstinence to remain sober.
Right. Yeah.
That's all anybody has the right to do. Right. In my mind.
Well, if you see his profile picture is a giant pot leaf, so I don't think that he is abstinent.
Well, before that, he had
So
left another
this
comment.
this was the comment. I missed it. This was the comment before it. Traditionally, recovery has a 1.5% success ratio. I think exploring alternatives is far past necessary.
Absolutely.
Well said, Josh.
I
Well
think
said.
maybe
And
Josh
had
had.
comments in order, we would have reframed that last one.
I said, well,
Yeah, I
wait,
think he
you said
might have.
something before, and I went back up.
Great, Brianna. You had one job. You had one
One
job.
job.
Now we.
He's not letting me
Joshua
touch
right
anything.
Because if she touches it, it's gonna mess up. So I will do it, and she can watch.
I love we are never doing another episode without both of you in it, because that dynamic just makes me smile like all the time, right? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Josh, by the way, for your input, man. I do appreciate it, and you're absolutely right. 1.5%. It's not a
great
statistic
show,
show.
right? Yeah.
Someone else can read this one.
But for the 1.5% that it works for, freaking congratulations.
Right.
And I'm proud of you.
Absolutely.
I have
I will say.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, you're going to read it. Go ahead. Yeah, right.
I always felt that I knew I could use weed as well. I have 8.5 years off opiates and heroin, and some people just don't get it, but oh well. Been looking into the mushrooms avenue for further healing after more shadow work.
That's a Jungian reference.
That's right up Quinn's alley right there.
Shadow work.
Yep.
Yeah, that's Jungian concept.
I think the most amazing thing about mushrooms is, it is getting explored in a medical office.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. As is ayahuasca, as is there's a lot of things at least that are really being looked at. Dr. Rob Tanguay, he's an authority in addiction medicine, whatever country you're in. He's pretty well known. He's on the show, and said that to him, he thinks ketamine will be a mainstream addiction drug sooner than later. Right?
As it was intended in the 70s.
Yeah. Right. So
I've seen. People are doing it.
Vanessa Valentine. Yeah. Right.
Well, psilocybin is legal as a therapy in Canada, but you have to be registered and trained. The problem is psilocybin therapy, mushrooms.
Yep. It's I think it's here in the US too.
Yeah, they're starting to legalize. They got it decriminalized in Colorado and Oregon.
Yeah. And
you can maybe a couple other states.
And you sit in
Boston,
the office and have a little session.
I had to throw in this sarcasm comment. Abstinence really worked for teen pregnancy too.
Well said, Lauren.
True story.
The mood or mind altering substances also includes the day after pill, because if you ask any woman, how do you feel after taking the day after pill, I promise you their mood and mind is not happy.
Bump.
Yeah. So, hey, if you're abstinent and you're working traditional recovery, remember, if you have unprotected sex and you got to go and get the day after pill, according to abstinence rules, you can't do that. So
right,
you're gonna lose your sobriety if you take the day after pill. That just doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't make sense to me, right? That's exactly what I'm saying.
It might be
by AA. You're right. By AA regulations, by the rules of AA, you can't even take the day after pill because that is a mood or mind altering substance. But somebody's going to tell you, no, that's not a relapse. You're right. I don't think that's a relapse because that's an appropriate setting. You went out, you broke your legs, you need morphine. Mm-hmm. You went out, you accidentally got pregnant, you need the day after pill. Should that cost you your relapse? I don't think so. So by my standards, taking the day after pill is not a relapse. I was just trying to, portray like how ridiculous that sounds,
Absolutely.
Well-
Yeah. It's
Well,
a
yeah,
good way
and
to
like
say
you
it.
said, it depends on the person, like Matt Keegan, for instance. I love the dude. He has different views. So like he took kratom. He felt that was a relapse on his end taking kratom. I take kratom for my MAT, however you may see it. So even though like it just goes to show that it's how each person views it, but it's not like but he doesn't go around saying anybody that takes kratom is relapsing and they're not sober. That was just his personal
for him. Yeah.
for him.
Absolutely. Right?
You
And
know, so
that's where that's where the honesty and the transparency comes in.
Which is
Right.
tough,
You know?
right? So, and like in the early recovery, that's a hard thing to get to, right? So that's yeah.
Absolutely.
read this.
Dana said, I'm proud because I just had surgery today and refused anything for pain after. And she's a recovering opioid addict.
I gotta
Good
give
for
her
you,
a
Dana.
hand for that.
Congratulations, Dana.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
awesome. And this is one of those cases where you're just like, hey, if I don't need it, I'm not gonna take it. If I broke my if I broke my femur, the doctors are gonna give me the morphine whether I ask for it or not, because they're about to cut my leg open and freaking put screws and everything. I don't get the choice.
Yeah,
And so
right.
that's where I was kind of
Ooh,
afraid is like,
man.
what happens if something like that happens where I have to, in my brain, I'm like, hey, if I ever take another opiate again, I'm going to lose my sobriety. So something like that takes that choice away from me. And it's like, hey, you're in a coma. You don't get the choice. I hit you with the morphine so we could operate on you. And then I wake up and I find out, oh, they hit me with morphine. Oh, well, that's a relapse to me.
Yeah, it is.
In my head, if I have it instilled in my head, hey, if I do any of these things, if I do XYZ, that's a relapse, and then something like that happens, now I've lost my sobriety. What's keeping me from just going out and
Exactly.
I'm gonna have to walk up and get a white chip anyway. Might as well.
I think you really hit it there. Is like this is why these things. I feel a lot of these terms we're using are a detriment because even like the disease model, for example, it's helpful in the beginning, sure, but again, eventually, like you said, something drugs change your brain. Everything changes your brain. A sunset changes your brain. The most wonderful phenomenological or phenomenon in the universe is the human brain and its capacity to repair itself and to be more robust than it ever has been. And so, like for me, it's like, what is the goal? And like I understand Matt, he decided for himself, but I mean, was that according to him? Because
that was according to him.
Yes, but was it though? That's my question.
No.
Because to me, it sounds like that is a borrowed concept that is not his choice, and he's aligning with that concept, which is
If that works for him, it is according to him.
I hear that, but my point is he even challenging that?
Oh,
I
think
are we challenging
he's
all of
challenged the
these
shit
things?
in that.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Are we challenging the things we're living by and the things that we truly believe in and actually asking ourselves, is this my idea? Like, you know how many definitions of the world I live by that were my father's?
Yeah.
Until I realized it. You know what I mean? Have I decided that I'm talking to you on a computer, or am I told that? And for
So
me,
I think, Brian,
it is a
it's
computer.
just because of the conversation we're having, I think it's important to say that you are asking that, not implying that it's not.
I'm
right.
I no, there's a bigger question. Are we asking ourselves?
Okay.
Choice is freedom, right?
I'm speaking to the perceived tone here, Ryan. That's all. Because it's like, if I'm Matt right now, I'm going, hey, man, you know what I mean? But like, you're recommending that people ask themselves that. I'm just
challenge your own belief system. I would say find out where that comes from. And if it's from you, then it's from you. But if that's my coach talking to me, if I can even hear that voice in my head, then that's not mine. And when I don't choose, I don't get freedom, which means when I don't choose, I form oppression. And everything has a chance. Too much of it, like even recovery. You said like we traded weed for my drug of choice. A lot of people trade AA for their drug of choice, and that becomes another form of oppression. And personally, I experienced that myself and realized that I was a robot within a number of different people. And then the other thing is like that's where it became personal. I decided that spirituality was a really personal experience. A really personal journey for me. Recovery, I don't use the term myself, but being a human being, which is what I'm focused on. Like recovery, I don't like because it's a deficit term. I like the idea of potential and access to potential and really flourishing as a human being. So like You know, when in my recovery, no, this is about my journey of living. This is about that short distance between the delivery room to the morgue, and how am I feeling that time? And am I who I want to be? Am I living the life I want to live? Have I even asked the question if this is my life I'm living? Because I know for a fact that I lived a lot of my life based on what you guys thought of me, and there was no freedom in that.
Yeah.
All I found was I felt lost and I felt lonely.
Well said.
And when I feel lost and lonely, I guarantee you I'm going to cope with something.
Yeah, we got
So-
coping strategies built in for that shit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really love what you said, especially about we're trading dope. We're trading one thing for another, and for some people, they're like, I get what you're saying. Some people are gonna be like, no, that's not true. I'm not replacing heroin for AA classes. I'm going to a recovery program, and so people can't make that correlation. What I like to talk about is the fact that nobody, and you guys are probably going to be like, what the? Nobody here has ever been addicted to a substance mentally. You may have been physically addicted to a substance, but what we're addicted to, the reality is we're addicted to the amount of dopamine, the amount of serotonin, the amount of feel-good chemicals that we are receiving from those drugs. I wasn't physically addicted. Like, I was physically addicted to opiates. Obviously, we know what physical withdrawals are. But as far as like cocaine or whatever, I wasn't addicted to heroin. I was addicted to the amount of things that that heroin did to me. The release of dopamine, that feel-good feeling, that freaking whatever. And so what we're chasing, and what every brain is chasing, is not drugs, it's dopamine. Right? At a basic level, what I'm chasing is dopamine. And because I'm getting 1,000 times the amount of dopamine that gets released when we fall in love, I'm falling in love with what heroin brings me. The feeling that I am being loved, the feeling that everything's going to be okay, that warm feeling of like, hey, nothing else matters. Right? So when we say, hey, you're just switching this drug for that drug, the reality is we're all replacing this dopamine for that dopamine, whatever you decide it to be, whether it's the dopamine that you get from attending a meeting and talking in front of people and talking about sobriety and this and that and the rest. That's the dopamine that we're getting from that, and that's replacing the dopamine that we were getting from heroin. Same with weed, same with freaking playing sports, same with falling in love, same with toxic relationships, same with anything that's got a high dopamine reward. That's what we're chasing. And ultimately, for somebody in early recovery, when they're used to filling that brain with 1,000 milligrams of dopamine every day, and then you get sober, and now you're only getting you're getting dopamine deficit, where you're putting out 10 milligrams of dopamine as opposed to 1,000 milligrams, your brain is like, yo, what's going on? Where's all the dopamine? Like, I'm used to living good. I'm used to living, hocked up on dopamine. And so our brain is like, where is the dopamine? And our brain starts to search, where can I get more dopamine? And for somebody who's trained their brain for 18 years of addiction like I have to get that dopamine flood from substances, my brain has built those neurological passages that says, hey, I know the answer. Drugs. But to a normal brain, somebody who has never experienced addiction, and their brain says, hey, I need stimulation, I'm craving dopamine, they go out and they work out, or they freaking call a good friend, or have a reminisce about
meal,
good times,
get laid, whatever, right?
Right,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
But what they're getting from those things is not the person, it's not the sex, it's not the freaking classes, it's the dopamine release that we're getting from doing those things.
Absolutely.
That's why we do service work. That's why we're like, hey, go out and do something for somebody, because that's a high dopamine reward. You see a smile on somebody's face, boom. That's why it's part of the program.
Hey, so to interrupt you, Quinn, Jared's telling us that we have a shit ton of comments. I saw Shan's pop up on there. I'll start out with that. Maybe start knocking some of these comments out of the park. Jared.
Before I did that, the Alicia, she's the one that commented on the pregnancy. Well, she had responded back, and I'm just kind of gonna go. I'm not gonna put them all up really quick, before I go to Shan's. But she said, "What the actual fuck? What kind of meeting is this? I'm seriously wondering though." And of course, I wasn't gonna cut you guys off. I was waiting. And then she said, I've been clean off opiates for 5 years, but I'm just wondering. And then she said, well, I guess I'm going to head out because no one is answering. I guess I'm going to go cope one way or another. So I responded in the comments that I was letting them finish before I answered. This isn't a meeting; it's a discussion we're having.
Okay. Yeah. It's not a meeting. Sorry for anybody that thought that it was or thinks that it is. It's just an open-ended conversation.
Yeah, exactly. But she got upset, so I just wanted to just let let her know if she's listening. I was waiting for them, you guys to stop before so we could answer the question.
Yeah, fair enough.
Sorry about
that.
that.
If you want to put the comments in order, Jared, most certainly. Let's. I don't want to leave anybody feeling that what I said is not being heard. Right?
So there's a two-part for Shan. This is the first part.
Shan's my people. We love Shan. She's really close to one of our other co-hosts, Dr. Lisa.
She left us earlier when Quinn was talking about
the
morning after pill and
the morning after.
Yeah. So
she's like, I can't do this.
Well, and I wouldn't say AA would say that if you take a prescribed drug, it's prescribed. It isn't a relapse. And you're right, Shan.
Great.
Right. But I think
the back part.
Quinn was using that example as an extreme version. I don't think it was like the morning after pill, right? It was said to make a point, not to not to say that it was actually a relapse, right?
And then she followed up with the relapse is an intentional misuse.
Yes, absolutely, and I agree with that. And that's what I'm saying is that we here and across the nation, freaking 14 states now have now classified medical marijuana as being helpful. I mean, they've done the studies. The FDA has decided, yes, there is medical uses for cannabis. And so you go and you get your prescription from a doctor, and then you go to a medical dispensary where they give you your prescription. The only difference is that I don't have to go to CVS to get my prescription. I go to a dispensary. So I love that she said that, because it is a prescription. And by the terms of AA will tell you that's an outside issue because you guys aren't doctors. You guys don't get to decide what my recovery looks like. And that's exactly what I'm getting at is that, in 1936, let's just remember in 1936, marijuana was not actually even illegal yet. Neither was cocaine or heroin or morphine or anything. You could get it off the shelves. So the program of AA, if you look back, is actually not a program of drug abstinence. It's of alcohol, right? So this whole program of AA is based off of alcohol. And over the years, not Bill Wilson, but the people who have chaired the meetings, who have built the community around AA, have started to dictate, well, you are not sober if you do this, you're not sober if you do that, you have to have a sponsor. Nowhere in the big book does it say anything about a sponsor. These are all things that the group of AA has instilled and put in guidelines. There's nowhere in the big book that says that a man can't sponsor a woman. There's no, it doesn't say anything about 13th steppers. Those are all things that we as a community have added to the program, not Bill Wilson.
And in most cases, I would say for the betterment of the program, broadly speaking, right? I mean,
I absolutely agree that men shouldn't sponsor women and vice versa. It gets sticky. I agree with that. But if you want to say, hey, I'm following the big book, that's not, we started to mold.
There's a big exception to that rule, right? So my yoga teacher here, her sponsor is a guy here in Thailand. I was like, I'm listening to her, and she saw me go, what? Right? And so she finished what she was saying, and then moved on to say, here in Thailand, the recovery community for Westerners isn't huge. So it's kind of one of those, if you connect with somebody, male or female, it doesn't really matter, right? So long as the respects and all of those things are in place, right?
Right.
So
absolutely.
Let's get some more comments up there, buddy. Yeah, right.
Tiffany,
congratulations on you. 2015, 8 years. Hey, 8 years.
Nice.
Go, Tiffany.
Congratulations.
Keep up the good work. Need you in the fight. Yes.
Yeah.
Next up.
Okay.
You're gonna have to pick a comment for radio voice of the day. Right?
Back up. Here you go. Do it. This is your.
This is what Shad gets it again. Okay. All right.
There's only 2 comments left, and it's both her.
Okay. So Shan says in the radio voice, Shan, you win. I agree. And I think it is awesome. I believe in recovery that works, period. And the extremes, like the example, don't help anyone. And I avoid those people in the rooms. There you go. So
Well, I'd probably be somebody you would avoid in the rooms. Because I will challenge every way of thinking. When you get to a point where you have studied the big book and you see the holes in it, and you see where people have taken over the program and then they still say, oh, this is backed by the big book, I'm sorry. I'm going to poke holes in it. I'm not even sorry, because I've done enough research and I actually discovered that Bill Wilson, the founder of AA, as we know, created the program of Alcoholics Anonymous in 1936, right? Before marijuana was illegal, before all the other drugs were illegal. In 1934, December of 1934, so you could say maybe a year and a month at the most from when he created the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. You were talking about philosophy earlier. The great philosopher Carl Jung was friends with Bill Wilson. They were good friends. And Bill Wilson went to New York in December of 1934 and did what was called a Townes-Lambert cure. This Townes-Lambert cure was a mixture of belladonna and henbane, which are dissociatives, like psilocybin, like ibogaine, like ayahuasca. In December of 1934, he does this 3-day treatment, psychedelic treatment, okay? Within the next few months, he writes a letter to Carl Jung, the great philosopher, and outlines his experience. Tells him how he freaking disassociated, regressed back to his, the ego death. And he is written, it is documented in this letter as Bill Wilson saying, I have had a white light spiritual awakening. And then a year and some change later comes up with a whole program of Alcoholics Anonymous. So you have to ask yourself,
So it
was
seems
the
like
was the
correlation.
spiritual awakening that we're promised in the 12th step a result of what he got from a psychedelic experience?
So I want to get Ryan your take on that, because I know you know your program, your 12-step history as well as anybody I know. You're versed in the 12 steps.
And-
Not being a 12-stepper now, Ryan, I mean, right?
Yeah, no, I'm saying when he's
Yeah.
done, we'll end
Yeah.
with that,
Okay.
because we're on an hour and a half now.
So what?
So what? Jesus.
I got kids, so
Yeah.
there's that.
Well, there is that. Okay, yeah. It's fucking 10:30 in the morning here in Thailand. Let's do this all day, right? So
Yeah. So what do I think?
That was the
of
best
that?
laugh I ever heard.
Well,
I had a girl
I'll tell
that
you what.
dated me because I sounded like Bert Kreischer, right? Like, I shit you not, right?
You definitely have a face for radio, Chuck.
That's one of my lines all the time.
If faces mama can love, though, that's it.
Yeah, right. Well, barely
I'm just
that,
messing
really.
with you, bro.
Yeah,
I love
she used to tell me if I could make them laugh, I could make them naked. Right. So I just, actually, she told me if I got naked, I'd make them laugh. But,
you. Sorry, man, sorry.
How long have you been telling that joke for?
for like 23 years, and it
Come
still
on.
works almost every
Oh,
time.
It
Let me tell
lands
you, right?
every time.
Wow, 60% of the time, every time.
Anyway,
I
thoughts
don't
on
know.
that,
I got lost there.
We were talking
Well,
about
Wilson's
the
spiritual awakening.
philosopher.
Young was great. Young was a little bit of an outcast, though. He was from the Freudian tree and went off and kind of went a Rogerian way, and then he went into the reason that he was challenged a lot is because he brought the spiritual dynamic into psychotherapy, which actually launched a whole another realm of different modalities, two of which I worked from. So they had issues with actually finding people that wanted to join up with the first 100 men and women. And so like Silkworth wanted to be anonymous until he saw that it was successful, and so like
Sounds like any content creator's friends, right?
and then I mean I can't get past the question. I think I asked it last time. Would you go to a doctor that works out of a textbook from 1939? I mean, and like it's written by a failed stockbroker and failed doctor, and 98 other men and women. But so like for me, it's like I kept relapsing, and and that term, say that to a doctor and watch him look sideways, because relapse in a medical term means more to do with a butthole than it does anything to do with drugs. So even that term, there's a lot of misplaced stuff, I think. And so when for me it was like, I want to live a beautifully peaceful, enjoyable life. And I started looking at what became prisons for me. And this is where it was like, fuck the noise thing. We're like, I don't care personally. Like, I don't care if it's a disease. I think it's a neurofeedback loop response. That's what I believe addiction is, based on endorphins and cortisol. Sorry, what was the
Dopamine.
chemical?
Dopamine.
Dopamine and cortisol. Cortisol, when they work together, you have a behavior pattern. And I saw something that said coping from what? Well, coping from everything that keeps us out of rhythm, everything that takes us out of the stream of life. And that would be trauma, that is neglect, rejection. That's what we're coping with. And that's what it is. Addiction is a coping stance. And when we do it enough times, the cortisol comes in and locks all the parts of our brain in our cerebral cortex that we need where our individuality is, where our rational thinking is, where our reason is. And so you have a loop that's born of behavior based on that emotional driver. And so that's and what's the wonderful magical elixir that fixes that loop? What's at the end of that loop? It's dopamine.
Snort, drinks,
or donuts or fucking cards. You know what I mean? Like, it is a behavioral issue, and so like physical dependence sets in after 18 days of straight use. Medical fact. However, addiction is not physical dependence.
No.
And addiction is a OCD locked neural loop feedback response that ultimately ends in the release of mass amounts of dopamine. And there's another specific to heroin. There's another hormone that's released. It's the hormone that's released when we're babies and we make eye contact with our mother. There's
dimethyltryptamine.
Yeah. And so that is and that's why we have this heroin love, because I use heroin with this girl and I get that feeling, the warm hug, or mama's taking care of me, and I attach it to her, and now I have the most toxic relationship you can think of. You know what I mean? But it's like, I love her, and I actually don't. I get some semblance of healing in my brain from the destruction of the opiate use, and most importantly, access to all the parts of my brain I need to be an individual, and we have this like reborn, I don't call it spiritual awakening. I use the term paradigm shift because spiritual awakening, well, for me, I don't believe there's good and bad, right and wrong in the world. I think that's a construct of the human mind, and we need and then when it comes to stigma, that just reminded me of this thing. Is like stigma is you making sense of me for you. You know what I mean?
No,
so,
without a doubt.
I don't need to identify anything to anybody unless they've earned it.
Yeah,
and it's very personal. So, like, for me to wear and I did this for years, but I was Ryan, addict in recovery, no, it's not who I am. Actually, who I am is I'm a human being that is flourishing in untapped potential. And that's the way I'm going to live my life.
Yeah, I've tried that line in AA, and they don't find it funny. Hi, my name's Quinn, and I'm a human being. They don't like it.
They don't like me in AA.
Yeah.
One time I went up to the podium and I listed off for 5 minutes everything that I was, and then walked out. And at the end, I said, and an alcoholic.
Don't forget your white chip.
Yeah. And needless to say, I don't go there anymore.
And I think, Chuck, this is a good time to end because we can hop on the next week.
Fair enough, right? We sure can. Hey, listen, I do want to add something. I'm going to surprise you with it here because it just occurred to me. How about we get a quick daily gratitude out of everybody? Because you know how I feel about those and they're important, right? Yeah. So, Ryan, just start with you. Got a daily gratitude for us?
Well, seeing as how it's 7:30, I'm super grateful for a very loving and patient wife. I hope you're listening. And my 2 beautiful little girls. And I'm grateful for struggle that teaches me so much about my existence.
There you go, Jared, Brianna, then Jared
first, ladies first.
Right? Absolutely. You don't have to remind me, bro. I'm all over her. I mean that. Yeah.
Yo.
No. Just no shame. Just straight.
No,
I am grateful for the most simple thing that can happen every day. I'm grateful for waking up this morning.
Mm-hmm.
Nice one. Nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Jared, what you grateful for?
I'm grateful for this, for community, for just being able to just sit here and just have an authentic conversation, whether someone agrees or not. And, like, even though it's not a meeting, like this is a meeting for me personally, so like, that's just, I'm grateful for it. I'm just grateful to have people like you guys on here, and I'm grateful to be able to do this with the lovely Brianna Elizabeth. Even though she said I
There you
didn't
go.
call it lovely
She
There you
earlier.
go.
Such
There you
an
go.
eye
He brought
roll.
it back. He brought
Oh,
it back.
thanks
He
for
saved
picking it
it. It's good stuff.
Better be
I
quiet.
can't hold a candle to that, man, Brianna. I'm just gonna have to step out of the fight. I'm sorry.
Listen,
Yeah,
he's gonna.
yeah.
We're gonna go get chocolate after this too. That's how he's gonna.
Yeah, and
Suck
then some yoga. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.
Dopamine.
chocolate and yoga. That's how we're gonna end our day.
Dopamine.
Dopamine. Go get some dopamine.
Yeah, yeah. Quinn, what are you grateful for tonight?
You know, I'm really grateful in the progress that I'm seeing in society as a recovery community. Because when I started posting 2 years ago on TikTok about Cali Sober, about this is the way that I'm doing it, I have never, ever told anybody, hey, this worked for me, so it's going to work for you. I've never told anybody my way's the way. I've never told anybody my way's the right way. I've only ever shared my experience. And people who are curious and ask questions, I answer questions. But I've never tried to push my form of recovery onto anybody. But when I first started, I got a lot of flack. A lot of people tell me, you're not sober, you're not this, you're not that, you're not whatever. Today, when I see Matt Keegan jump in the comments and be like, hey, I just want to show some love, I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for people who are starting, I don't want to say he started, but I'm grateful for people who are starting to see that recovery isn't one size fits all, that there is no right way to recover for one person to the next, that this whole thing that we call recovery is just like a giant mountain, and there's different paths up that mountain. I don't care which way you get up there. I just want to see you at the top. And I don't care if it's through abstinence. I don't care if it's through medical assisted treatment. I don't care if it's through cannabis. I don't care what it is. I don't care if you have to take Wellbutrin and freaking, I understand that mental health exists. And so I'm grateful that this last 2 years, I've seen a community of people start to change their way of thinking and say, okay, maybe cannabis isn't right for me, but maybe cannabis is right for the next person. Or maybe Suboxone isn't right for me, but hey, I recognize that this guy who's got freaking, he just came off the streets. That might be the stepping stone that he needs to get to the next stepping stone of recovery, whether it's abstinence or whatever. Right? So that's what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for every single one of you who's like, maybe this doesn't work for me. Maybe that's not the right path for me, but I can recognize sobriety and what that means. It's not about being abstinence. It's about being sober of the mind. And I can see that in you. And even though you're managing your mental health differently than me, I respect the journey that it took for you to get here. And I'm not going to play it down because I know what works for me and we have a different way. So
Nice.
I'm grateful for every single one of you.
Well said. I'm
What about you, Chuck?
I'm thankful for metaphors. There is so many that come into the recovery world. Every person I talk to has a different metaphor, right? Right. That was good, man. That was fucking genius, right? Yeah, that was top notch, man.
You know what? Hold on a second. I want to quote Amy Schumer. Okay, when it comes to the morning after pill, she says, "Plan A, more like Plan B." I thought of that when you said that. I was like, I better not put that.
Well, all right.
And hold on, Chuck. On that, sorry, I have to piggyback off Ryan.
Oh, sorry, Chuck. You ain't getting
with the Plan B. So my job, I work
kill
for
everybody.
I work for a medical transport company, and we're called Plan B Express Transit. And our logo is pink. It's pink, and everybody thinks that we're taking people to have abortions.
That's right.
You don't know how many times I get asked, "Are you taking girls
door to door baby service?"
Yeah,
oh
we got
my
a
God,
whole.
that's horrible.
No, actually, we're just transporting the fetuses.
Yeah. So I had to hop in on that.
This cooler.
Well, so I'm thankful for the last episode ever of BlakAsh Radio. Right?
We're canceled after this.
Oh boy.
No, seriously, guys, I am thankful to each and every person that watches this after we record, each and every person that jumped in with comments, each and every person that continues to watch, listen, support the message. The message is this: if you are in active addiction right now, today could be the day. Today could be the day that you start a lifelong journey. Reach out to a friend, reach out to a family member, call into detox, go to a meeting. I don't care. Do whatever the hell it is you've got to do to get that journey started, because it is so much better than the alternative. And if you have a loved one who's suffering an addiction right now, who's taking the time to listen to this rather long conversation, if you could just take one more minute out of your day and text that person, let them know they are loved. Use the words.
You are
Loved.
That little glimmer of hope just might be the thing that brings them back.
Amen to that.
Right.